So I'm sitting in the audience at 30 Rockefeller Plaza. The cameras are panning, and suddenly, just for a second, I'm on NBC television singing along with Adam Sandler. It's Saturday Night Live. It's chaotic. It's high stakes. It shouldn't work, and yet it does.
Okay, well, I'm not gonna let you get away with just a snippet of that. We're gonna be getting more into that story from the killer bees to the gritty edge of the new UK reboot. We're dissecting the house that Lorne built. Is Saturday Night Live the last gasp of old showbiz, or is it the only thing keeping live performance going?
Today, we're talking about the new Lorne Michaels documentary in theaters this weekend. It's called Lorne. We're talking about the Canadian comedy mafia and the time I ended up at a SNL after party with Paul McCartney and Allen Ginsberg.
Everything is broken, but the red light is on. Let's go, Richard.
Good to see you.
Good to see you, Richard. How have you been?
Good, good. I have been. And this is what sort of made me think about the theme for this week's show because I've been out a fair amount lately, watching live things. I've been watching. I was in New York and I saw the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I guess it's just the Rocky Horror Show rather than the Rocky Horror Picture Show
Right.
on Broadway with Luke Evans and Juliette Lewis and all sorts of Rachel Dratch from Saturday Night Live, which we'll talk about shortly. Stephanie Sue, just all sorts of great actors, and it was fantastic. And then I get back to Toronto, and a few days later, I go see Chicago, which is a show that I've seen a whole lot of times, but we got invited to go, which is lovely. And we get there, and the thing that made it exciting was not just that it's a fun show. I mean, regardless of how many times you've seen it, it's in a live situation and it is a fun show. The songs are great, but there was an understudy who came on and played the part of Roxy Hart, one of the lead roles in the play. And it was just so exciting to see someone step up and actually like knock it so far out of the park as an understudy. And it just got me thinking about this idea of live performance and what it means to have something live entertaining you. And then I saw the movie Lorne about Lorne Michaels, and it's all about Saturday Night Live, which, as the name implies, is live. And so that's sort of where we're headed this week, I think.
I what is better than live? I think it's
Yeah.
it's about the uniqueness, the singularity. It's never going to happen again. It's
Yeah.
not just visual. You can feel it in your bones and you're part of it. But I'm not going to let you get away that quickly. I need you to tell me everything about Rocky Horror. The cast is incredible. It's
Yeah.
a favorite show of mine. I've never seen a play version of it.
Mm.
I've seen the what do they call it? Like shadow what do they call
Yeah.
that?
Well, the shadow, what do they call it? It's where the someone acts out the movie in front of the screen
Which is I mean,
so
even
far.
that alone is so fun, and even when you go to a Rocky Horror Picture Show
Mhm.
screening of the film, it's like this live, people are screaming, there's
Yeah.
call outs, there's certain moments where you have to, like, throw things. Was the live experience like that? Was it interactive that way? Tell me everything.
There was no throwing of anything, but it takes place. The theater is the old Studio 54, so you cast your mind back to what happened in that room, in that building, and then you're here for this decadent thing. And they've really dressed up the theater. All the seats were like they were made out of chrome. They looked like you were on a spaceship, kind of thing. There was eerie green lights everywhere. There were skeletons holding signs telling you where to go. All the cocktails were themed to the show. There was I think a drink called the Damn It Janet and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And but then the show starts, and Juliette Lewis, playing Magenta, comes out and she sings Rocky Horror, the opening song, and it's fantastic. She's so good, and it progresses from there, and you forget. I've seen the movie 1,000 times. I think this is only the second time I've seen it live. I saw it in England when I was a kid on stage, and I bought a poster that night, that was a silkscreen poster, which is, I guess, how they used to do them, million decades ago, and I carried it around for
They
40
chiseled it?
years.
I think it was chiseled.
Yeah, yeah, that's right, yeah, it's a stone cut, like, from, one of the tablets from the Ten Commandments, but it's beautiful, and I carried it around for about 40 years, before I had it framed, and now it's hanging, in our place here, and it looks great, and so I saw it then, and then saw it again here and in New York, and, this was it is so much fun because it feels kind of like a cabaret, the Rachel Dratch played the narrator, and she just by nature of what Rocky Horror has become with the audience yelling out things and responding, it is interactive to a certain extent. They don't throw things on Broadway, but some people were doing the chat from the audience, and the actors all knew how to roll with it and sort of make it happen. But Luke Evans, man, oh man, he played Frankenfurter, and let's just look Luke Evans up here. Luke Evans is someone that you've seen in 100 different movies. I mean, from on stage, he's been in everything. It's like Miss Saigon, Rent, all that kind of stuff. But you know him from, let's have a look here. Um, Lots of things. The Hobbit trilogy,
Oh, yes.
the Fast and Furious franchise, Beauty and the Beast, The Girl on the Train, High Rise, Dracula Untold. It goes on and on and on. Often playing a bad guy. Here he plays Rocky Frankenfurter, who has the greatest entrance possibly in all of show business,
Stop.
And he comes down this long staircase. He's wearing boots that are about this high, the high heels, but he's wearing a cape sort of made out of feathers. And I was so nervous he was gonna, tumble down the stairs. Those shoes alone were ankle breakers. I could feel it in my bones. But he makes it all the way down, and people were hooting and hollering, and it really sets the tone. It's about the fourth or fifth song into the show, but really set the tone. So all in all, an incredible experience. People were dressed up, people were having a good time. And normally, when I go to something on Broadway or in the theater, I don't really want a whole lot of interaction, frankly. But the Rocky Horror Show, it's part of the gig, it's part of the whole thing, and it was fantastic.
Tell me everything about your SNL live experience.
I don't remember if there were tickets or not. It was February 13th, 1993. Alec Baldwin was the host. Paul McCartney was the musical guest. And he played three songs, more, rather than the usual two. "Hey Jude" being the last of the three songs, and because the studio was so small, and I was sitting in the main part of the audience, I was sitting feet away from Paul McCartney as he played "Hey Jude," which was an incredible experience. If that's the only thing that happened that night, that would have been enough. But I ended up there because my friend Paul Myers, who has just written a great book about John Candy, his brother, of course, is Mike Myers on the show, and he invited us down. And so we went, and because we were guests of Mike, we got great seats and we got to go to the party afterwards and that kind of thing. But it was kind of an incredible show. It was, uh, the cast was Adam Sandler and David Spade and Chris Farley. It was that era of them. Phil Hartman, the great Phil Hartman was there. And lots of other really, great performers. And Mike was just starting to get like the real arc of fame from Wayne's World happening, and so there was a lot of stuff going on that night, and being in that audience was crazy. And if you see that episode, and it's around, I haven't looked at it, but I will tell you that on the music documentary that they made for the 50th anniversary, you can see me Adam Sandler, it cuts to Adam Sandler singing Red Hooded Sweatshirt, and then it cuts to me in the audience going, "Bum, bum, bum," and singing along with it as they did. So I just happened to be there on one of those nights where they did a lot of stuff like reaction shots from the audience, which they do every now and again. They do a little less so these days, but I was there for that. So, and then there's another shot where Alec Baldwin walks through the audience, and you see me literally doing this. Yeah.
Oh,
And,
I love
but
how you're the only person in the world who I would say, "Do you have your ticket from when you went to SNL?" And you'll say, "Well, I didn't really have a ticket because I was on special invite
well,
by the Myers Brothers." 'Kay,
but
stop.
it was an incredible evening. The after party afterwards was just speckled with the entire cast was there, and at the time I smoked, and Phil Hartman, who told me when we first got to the party, he said, "I've quit smoking. Do you mind if I have one of yours?" And then he smoked all my cigarettes. For the rest of the night, um, and he's Canadian, and he said to me, "My fellow Canadian." Every time he'd want a cigarette, he said, "My fellow Canadian, may I have another cigarette?" And the rest of them were all interesting and cool in their own way. But my most memorable part of the evening was talking with Jack Handy, a guy called Jack Handy, who used to write a thing called Jack Handy's um, uh, Deep Thoughts, and it would be a line or two. They were very fast, but they were very funny sort of observations on life, but with a real absurdist twist. I was a big fan of them. And so talked to this guy for a long time. Then there's a lot of us here at this party. So he wanders off and disappears into the crowd. And then he comes back and finds me later and he says, "I have someone here you have to meet." And it's Allen Ginsberg, the uh, famous beatnik poet.
What?
And so
Howell, Allen
yeah,
Ginsberg.
yeah, I've seen the best minds of my generation destroyed, but and so it's 3, 4, 5 o'clock. I don't know what time it is. It's late in it's middle of the night, almost the morning, and he's there, and we talk about a poem that he did years ago called "Smoke." Don't smoke, don't smoke, don't smoke. And I was, of course, standing there smoking. And he said, "Well, I've written some more choruses to that, some more verses to that. Would you like to hear them?" And I was like, "Absolutely, I would, Allen Ginsberg." And in the middle of this weird party, and this, like, Sting is sitting over there, and Paul McCartney is over there. And I think Paul Simon was, having drinks with Lorne Michaels on the corner and that kind of thing. Like, it was that kind of place. Allen Ginsberg read poetry to me. It was wild.
It's like that old school, like, when you think of art and Hollywood and
Mhm.
you just that's, like, what you imagine.
Yeah.
I feel like is that Lorne Michaels who helped create and cultivate that environment? Or and he's Canadian, right? And we're talking about
Yeah,
Mike
he's from
Myers, and
Toronto.
I feel like there is a Canadian connection to those, especially early SNL years. Like,
Yeah.
I wonder
Oh, for
if
sure. I mean, Dan Aykroyd, was Canadian. Some of the Rosie Schuster, I think, is Canadian. Lorne Michaels, obviously Canadian. And I know I'm forgetting a handful of other, Paul Schaefer, Howard Shore, like, all these people that were very, integral to the beginning of Saturday Night Live. But then you've got the Gilda Radner, who lived in Toronto for a long time and worked here. And so Canada had a great deal to do with the beginnings of, and I would argue with the entirety of the last 50 years of Saturday Night Live. There have been so many great performers from Canada on that show, and writers too. But it is all kind of brought to life in this movie and documentary, which is out this weekend, called Lorne. And it's directed by Morgan Neville, who is an Academy Award winner. He made a documentary called 20 Feet from Stardom about the backup singers in bands. That is
oh,
pretty
I love
great stuff.
that.
Yeah, it's a very cool movie. Now,
Often some of the most talent. When you hear
absolutely.
vocals, it's like the background vocals often
Yep.
carry the song, the rhythm, the
Yep.
narrative, the bass. It carries so much of a performance.
Yep, and that movie is great. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Lorne is in theaters this weekend, as I said, and it is about a reluctant subject. Like, Lorne Michaels is not really interested in having this documentary made, and he answers questions in this kind of um, enigmatic way. Morgan Neville at one point says, "So," or at one point, right off the top of the movie, says, "So, what is funny? What is funny?" And Lord Michael says, "Well, it's like pornography. You just know it when you see it." And, that's the kind of answer that he gives to everything. There's always sort of like an elliptical way that he refers to things. He is one of the most powerful people in television. He's produced so many giant hit movies, but he is best known, I guess, as this sort of oasis of calm in the midst of the chaos of Saturday Night Live. And as I was watching that, hot on the heels of just having seen Rocky Horror Show and Chicago, and I was thinking, Saturday Night Live is like one of the last bastions of real on the edge, seat of your pants, make it or break it live television that's left. Sports is another thing. That's a different thing. But in terms of shows that feature raw performance, that's about it. I mean, there used to be all sorts of like, the Ed Sullivan Show, which I think was live from New York, and there was so many live shows. Now there just simply aren't that many, and Lorne Michaels is kind of that last bastion of it. And I think even though the show for me has kind of gone up and down a little bit. I've always stayed with it because I love the live performance. I love the feel that you get when you know that there's no do-overs. You're going to get it right or you're not, and the show doesn't go to air at 11:30 because it's ready. It goes to air because it's 11:30.
I feel like it is the type of show that is so challenging, so much going on that unless you were actually there and see it, you couldn't even reconcile that. And so,
Right.
yes, it's so challenging that it's one of those things when it's great, everyone's going to talk about it and it
Yeah.
hits. But when it doesn't, people are so critical in a way that's just, like, really, really
Yeah.
unfair, to be honest. Yeah, to think, like, I will always hang in there. To think of the eras,
Hmm.
and the type of output that we have got, yeah, that's what comedy is. You have to take swings, and sometimes they're not gonna land, but in terms of, like, doing some research for this show and just, like, if you just go on YouTube and look up some of the best skits, the legacy is unmatched.
Yep. And I mean, think of the only show that I can think of that probably generated more catchphrases than Saturday Night Live, or maybe as many, is The Simpsons. And The Simpsons, had, and they don't really, maybe not so much now, but when they first started, they were, Cowabunga, man, all that kind of stuff was everywhere. But Saturday Night Live has touched popular culture in a way that few other shows have. It's been around for 50 years. It is intergenerational. But you're right. If there's a show, and I watch it every week, not often live, but I do watch the whole thing. I don't watch clips. I tape it and I watch the whole thing the next day. Um, but you look online and people say, "Oh, it's the worst show ever." Oh, the show hasn't been funny in years. Here's what I think. I think that Saturday Night Live and the cast is kind of like your James Bond. And what I mean by that is that your favorite James Bond is probably the first James Bond that you saw in a theater. Mine, Roger Moore. I know there's better James Bonds, but I think back to the Astor Theatre in Liverpool, Nova Scotia, watching Live and Let Die, and remember seeing Roger Moore jumping across the backs of alligators to escape, from imminent danger. And I thought that's the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Done.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, so done. And I've been, a Roger Moore fan since then. In fact, this tie has The Saint on it, which was the show he did before James Bond. And so Roger Moore is mine. My brother loves Sean Connery. Younger audiences, it's either Pierce Brosnan or it might be Daniel Craig, whatever it is, but it's the first one. So I think your first uh, cast that you see on Saturday Night Live is the one that you will always feel sort of endeared to.
That's so true. And then if it's not that, it's kind of easy to say like, "Oh, it sucks now," but
Yeah,
you never love anything as much as you do when you're, like, 14 years old or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, Ambiguously Gay Duo will always be the funniest shit
yeah.
I've ever seen in my entire life because I was just that perfect age, and it made me feel, "I get this.
Yeah.
This is so good," and I have to thank that skit because it taught me young one of my life's greatest pleasures, which is noticing the gay undertones and things. So
Right.
shout out to SNL for that. And it's true though, like every era. So my era was probably like Will Ferrell,
Right.
Molly Shannon, and so like yeah, I have when I get nervous, I just stick my arms under my like, yeah, to me, nothing is gonna top that, but that doesn't mean that, like, the eras after and the eras before aren't
Yeah.
also giving, like, it's
Well,
they
they're
and
different.
yes,
That's all.
exactly, and
Yeah.
I
Like,
forget how many actual stars came from SNL, like, when I was doing this,
oh,
let me just run down, like, a
it's
list.
ridiculous.
I'll go John Belushi, Dan Aykroyd, Chevy Chase, Bill Murray, I kind of forgot, Eddie Murphy, I kind of forgot, and he was on for a very long time.
Eddie Murphy, when he came, he kind of revitalized that show. And he was 19 years old, and he came on and created some characters that still make me laugh 30 or 35, whatever, however many years it is later. There's a great documentary about his life on, I think, Netflix called Eddie, and they show these old clips, and they're still screamingly funny.
Oh, yeah, and, like, cutting and biting and
Mhm.
it like, speaking about, like, racism in America and society that, yeah, if you put on today, they are just as relevant, just as funny. Martin Short, of course, and think about the legacies that these people now have, like, they're
Mhm.
still massive stars. Billy Crystal, I totally forgot, was on
Yeah, you
SNL.
look fabulous. Yeah,
So good!
yeah,
Mike Myers, Dana Carvey, of
yeah.
course, give us Wayne's World, Phil Hartman, who the Simpsons crossover is there as well.
Phil Hartman is one of the geniuses of that show. Like, he's an all-timer. If you start making a list of, like, the top 5, impossible to make a list of the top 5 without including Phil Hartman in that.
Because he does the straight man so well, which SNL
Ah,
is, like,
yeah.
so good at. They don't forget that level of humor, which is what you need, like that baseline and the subtlety of the humor, right, is
Oh,
so
well,
good.
that and he can play the unfrozen caveman lawyer and still, knock it out of the park, so,
Incredible stuff. Not David Spade is kind of
mm,
like that
I love
straight
David
guy
Spade.
too,
Yeah.
and then he played against Chris Farley, of course, in the Adam Sandler era with Chris Rock. Then were Will Ferrell, Molly Shannon, Sherry O'Terry, Tracy Morgan, Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Maya Rudolph, Kristen Wiig, Andy Samberg, Bill Hader,
Yeah,
incredible
yeah, love
talent.
Bill. Yeah.
This club has everything, right?
Yeah. Oh my the Stefon is one like now because I know we're going to talk about our favorite SNL stuff now a bit later, but Stefon had a thing when he talked about a club downtown, and he said they give you a glass of champagne, or is it piss? And it still to this day makes me laugh. And I love what they used to do. John Mulaney and Bill Hader would write Stefan's character. And then just before they went to air, Mulaney would throw all that away and write new stuff. So it's the first time that Bill Hader was seeing it, which is why he started covering his face because he was laughing.
I mean, when they crack, that's
Yeah,
almost the best stuff, right? Um, Will Forte, Fred Armisen,
yeah,
oh,
genius. Yeah,
like genius. Just looking at him makes me laugh.
yeah,
Straight up, the guy doesn't have to speak. He is so funny to me. Jason Sudeikis, who now, of course, is like Ted Lasso.
yeah.
Kate McKinnon, Pete Davidson, Kenan Thompson. Kenan Thompson has been on. How many years?
I'm not sure, but it's 14 or 15 years. And he is probably the longest running person ever on that show. And I hope he never leaves because he can do anything.
22
22 years.
seasons.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Ooh-wee. What's up with that? Again, just looking at this man makes me crack
Yeah.
ass, as Kyle Mooney would say, another
Yeah. Alum.
favorite of mine. Yeah, let's get into our favorites because now I'm all jacked up. Do
Well,
you have an all-time favorite sketch? It's hard.
it is hard, and I was thinking about it, and as soon as I say something, something else will occur to me. But like the Stefan stuff is pure performance art, and pure genius, and I will watch that anytime. You put all these people together, though, when you're going down the list, you think, okay, well, this is an incredible list. It's also, a list of really disparate people in terms of talent and all that kind of thing, and the things they can do. And you think about this movie Lorne that I keep mentioning. Mike Myers tells a great story in it. And, you don't learn a great deal about Lorne Michaels other than that his legacy is the show. And he's probably not going to talk about it that much. But Mike tells a story that has Lorne, and he is out in the country somewhere, and there's a huge pumpkin patch. And as far as you can see, there are pumpkins, and there's signs that say free pumpkins everywhere. You can take as many pumpkins as you want. And then he sees a guy, and there's a guy selling pumpkins. And so he goes up to the guy and says, "Why would I buy a pumpkin from you when there's all these free ones around here?" And the guy says, "Oh, because I have the best pumpkins. I know how to pick the best pumpkins." And then Mike says, "Lauren knows how to pick pumpkins."
Oh, I love that. That's
Yeah,
so good. And does he ever?
yeah,
And that's like the enduring legacy of this is it's not just it's the sum is greater than the parts type of
yeah,
thing, right? And now you have this legacy, and I can't even believe it's taken us this long to get into it, but we have it, the first spin-off, I guess we're calling it, or
right.
with the SNL UK, which is kind of shocking that it's 2026 and we're getting the first one. I feel like because SNL kind of had a Canadian edge to it, it kind
Mhm,
of functioned as SNL and SNL Canada,
right.
right? But the SNL UK actually does feel like kind of quite distinct, and I love it. Like, I actually
Mhm,
think that almost every skit has been successful in my mind, and I do think it's got a little bit more bite, and the things that maybe we say the US version has lost a bit in terms of its like political satire, its edge, its bite. I feel like the UK is bringing.
right. Well, I think you've got 2 different styles of humor, and I think also, and I was gonna mention this earlier, I think that, uh, SNL over 50 years, the US version has just reinvented itself constantly. There have been new casts, there have been new styles of comedy, certainly stuff that worked 40 years ago. Probably wouldn't work now, even if it's a classic, kind of idea. So, it has constantly reinvented itself. So it's hard to pin down, and it has changed a great deal. And it's not as, edgy as it once was or absurd as it once was, except for Sarah Sherman stuff, who I absolutely love. But
She is
the
fantastic.
yeah, the UK stuff I think is, really super interesting, but they have, a much more of a comedy as a blood sport, over there to a certain extent. And so the Last Supper sketch, on, Saturday Night Live UK with David Attenborough was, David Attenborough is narrating a Last Supper style table of, dead British icons like Freddie Mercury and Princess Di and Winston Churchill, and they each kind of have their say. But Attenborough in England and in the UK is an icon, is an absolute hero, but he's very distinctive in the way he speaks and the way he presents. And this thing, man, it made me laugh in a way that I haven't laughed in a long time at anything, SNL US included.
Yeah, they're really nailing it. And even just you mentioned Sarah Sherman, so it had me thinking when I've been seeing Sarah Sherman on the SNL, I've been she was the first one I noticed. Interesting, they put her in a wig a lot. Like they won't because she looks pretty quirky in real life. She dresses in lots of color,
Yeah,
pattern, short hair, and they will quite often just put her in a blonde wig and like what people might call like regular clothes, right?
right.
Like a Taylor Swift. Like they want her to be a Taylor Swift or a Taylor Swift fan or like a country music girl or like the girl next door. And I noticed with her because her style is so like diametrically opposed to
Mhm.
that in normal life. That I they kind of do it to all the women on SNL of this era, which is not something that like Kristen Wiig looked different, Kate McKinnon, like they all had their
Mhm.
own kind of personal style. And I feel like that has gone. We're literally just like they're just like, "She's blonde and she's wearing like a, a Lululemon set." Where the so I was instantly striked by the UK of even they're just not doing that. Even visually, the people look like they have tattoos, they have septum
Yeah.
piercings, they're not so even that I think is speaking to like the audience, maybe they're trying to go
Yes.
a little younger, maybe they're trying to go a little more progressive, a little more satirical, people who like kind of the political commentary
Mhm.
and social commentary more than uh, some of the listen, I love a goofy sketch. I love a just straight goof,
Me too.
but it feels like the UK is kind of and in fact, they're not avoiding it, they're meshing it. Like my favorite skit was the take on the traders where they're
Mm.
sitting on a round table and they're saying, "We gotta find the giant crab man, the giant big crab man." And there is clearly like a giant crab sitting at the table,
Yeah.
but instead they're going for like the Middle Eastern guy or the
Right.
black people at the table. All the white people are like, there's something suspicious about you. And these people are like, clearly there's a giant crab sitting at the table. And it literally is what watching the traders feels like sometimes, right? Like
Right.
when from the outsider's perspective, it's so clear. These people have biases that they're not internalizing, but you can see it from the outside. And so it's like they're doing this really good job of like, it was goofy and zany because there was like an actual person dressed as a big giant
Right.
crab man at the table, but it also was making that like really profound statement about internal biases and things like that on
Yeah,
traditional
and
media.
I think that, the Weekend Update on the UK version is doing a great job. There's Anaya Magliano and Patty Young, and, both have this sort of great delivery, but man, some of the stuff is pretty edgy, like, it's blunt and edgy, and particularly, I mean, there's one here, renovations to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's new residence, Marsh Farm, have been taking place, including installation of Sky TV. So if you're watching this, Andrew, hello, you're not going to like the next bit. Also, I'm older than I look. And so then it goes on to continue. But I just thought, it's like a little throwaway line, right? Also, I'm older than I look. And she immediately went into, something else. But it's in those little throwaway moments sometimes that the real gems start to sprinkle.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they've nailed it. I think this is going to be not a one-off. And hopefully we
Yep.
see other spin-offs, other countries. That would be great.
Yep. So we're talking about our favorite sketches. So what is one of your favorite all timers?
Okay, so for the US, it's hard. Like, I love the Farley era, like
Yeah.
his Chippendales audition with Patrick Swayze. I always go to that. Like I said, Mary Catherine Gallagher is a big one for me. But there is this Wayne's World, obviously. I love Mike Myers so much. Also, is it like Timmy in the bathtub? Is that his
Simon.
Simon in the
Yeah.
bathtub?
Yeah.
Obsessed. But there is this speaking of Artemis, okay, Artemis has been
Right.
in the news, the space shuttle. There is a Bobby Moynihan sketch where there's all these tough guys on a Mars mission. It's kind of like set up like a sci-fi film.
Right.
And they're all talking about what they miss from Earth, and they're like, "I miss beer, and I miss a hot steak." And they pan to Bobby Moynihan, who's sitting in the window, and he's like, "I just miss my kitty cat. I just miss my little kitty cat." And it's the funniest thing I've ever seen,
Yeah.
and it's one of those jokes. It's like the Killer Bees sketch, which is like
Yeah.
one of the original SNL skits where it didn't really hit the first time, and audiences even said like that was not funny.
Oh,
But
and
instead
the
of just
and the higher ups at NBC said, "Do not do that again. It's too absurd.
but
No
what
one gets
so
it."
what did they do?
They did it again the second week, but what I loved is they'd start a sketch, and then the bees would come in, and the people in the sketch would go, "Oh, I'm not these guys again," and then the next week, I think it was Rob Reiner was the host, and the bees invaded one of the things, and Rob Reiner starts to stomp around, "I don't want these bees in here," and then all of a sudden they became famous because and audiences loved them because, it was I think an example of on that show, you never knew what was going to happen. In the early days, I remember watching in the first few seasons of that show, where it felt like New York City. New York City at the time was falling apart, and crime was out of control, and it was just a hellhole. And Gerald Ford had said to New York City, can't remember the years, like 1975, 6, 7, 8, somewhere in and around there. They asked for federal funding to help, fix potholes, and he just said, "Drop dead. You're not getting a dime from me," because the city was a vast wasteland. But out of vast wastelands like that, because there's cheap rent and there's all that stuff, often you get these great creative scenes, punk rock, CBGB, Saturday Night Live, and so I loved it because I loved the spirit of you never knew what was going to happen, which very much is like the bees. I'm like, the bees are back. I can't believe the bees are back. But
And that's what comedy is. I mean, we
yeah.
have to be told what's funny. Like, it is the performer's thing to be like, no, it is funny, and we're just gonna like. And that's why I love the kitten sketch so much, because he just sticks with it, and
Yeah.
you're like, is he really gonna say that again? But he says it again, and he says it again, and instead of flopping, it just gets funnier and funnier every time, which is kind of like a metaphor for SNL and live performance like we're talking about. It's about being there and being present and like adjusting and making little feeling, anticipating the audience. And when you can do that and they're there with you, you're all there together, it is like the most magical, nothing better, the epitome of art we should all be striving towards. So thank you, Bibi Moynihan. I love you. You get me through
I'm
so many dates.
I'm gonna go back, for one of my, and listen, this is an incomplete list. If you ask me, tomorrow, it could be different again, but I'm gonna go back to the night I was there for, one of these things. So
Yes,
February
please.
13th, 1993, and there was a sketch where Chris Farley was gonna interview Paul McCartney, and, the Paul McCartney is just playing himself. He is Paul McCartney, super cool, super together, and Farley is fidgeting and he's sweating and he's just so pent up and he doesn't know what to do with himself. And he ends up saying things like, "Do you remember when you were in the Beatles? That was awesome. That was awesome." Doesn't ask a question really, just asks the most like, you know, super fan questions possible. And it was amazing. And it was Farley's performance completely. Like if you think about that jittery guy in the jacket that was like one size too small for him, so it made him look like he was literally coming out of his clothes. And it's like Matt Foley, I'm living in a van down by the river. It's that kind
Yes.
of energy to it, and it really was one of the funniest things I had ever seen live. Farley amazing. Paul McCartney's reactions were incredible. It's worth a look if you've never seen it.
Oh my God. So I don't, it's a long podcast, but I do have some quotes here that I was wondering if these quotes are so iconic. I bet Richard could guess every
Oh,
single one. And
let's
one
see.
is, I'm 35 years old and I live in a van
Yeah.
down by the river.
Well, and look at David Spade in that, first sketch because he said, "I'm not my other," and he crashes through the coffee table, and the look on Spade's face is absolutely priceless.
And he's like,
Absolutely worth the
he
price
has
of admission.
has to
Yeah,
put his hand. I was lucky enough to interview David Spade one time,
fun.
and he talked about Chris Farley, and they really like. So now I look back, and they really had this bond. Like I think I asked him like what his favorite project he ever worked on was, and he said Tommy Boy because he got to
Yeah.
work so closely with Chris. And it's like when you watch them together, they were the perfect. Like I could cry. It's such a tragedy to lose someone like that so young and think about all the art they could have made, especially like when they kind of like leave a comedic partner behind. So, I think David Spade is such a talent, and they had such a beautiful thing. Okay, so I'll give you a couple more.
Okay.
I think he
Alright.
can. This is an easy one. We're two wild and crazy guys.
I mean, this is back again when that show, like anything could happen. It was Dan Aykroyd, Steve Martin, the two wild and crazy guys. And, I was, in the world at that point watching the show. And, people would like, they'd see you coming on the street and they go, "Hey, because we're too wild," and everyone knew what it was. It became kind of like this cultural touchstone for a moment. The big crazy hats they used to wear. Loved it.
This one has maintained, being a cultural touchstone.
Mm.
Every fall you hear, "It's sweater weather. It's sweater weather.
That's Mike. Yeah.
That's Mike on
Yes.
Coffee
Yes.
Talk. That's right.
Yes. Yes.
See, and so again, that's one of those things. People will be out there saying it. They don't even know where it's from.
Yes.
You might be
Yeah.
like Mike Myers, and they're like, "What? No, I got this on TikTok." No, you didn't. Okay, this one. Well, isn't that special?
Yeah, the church lady, Dana Carvey, like, again, that was this period of rebounding when Saturday Night Live had had a couple of fallow years. And then all of a sudden, Dana Carvey becomes this giant star with these characters and his bang on characters and doing George Bush. And it was just kind of an incredible thing to see. And, his podcast now that he does with David Spade, Fly on the Wall, you can find it on YouTube, is pretty fun because, the church lady, let's just say, pops in every now and again on that.
I like to pull out, "Excuse me, I'd like to get by now,"
Mm,
anytime I'm out in
yeah.
public too. That's a Wayne's World.
Yeah.
This one is one of my favorites too. It's one of my favorite skits. It's before my time, but plumber? I didn't ask for a plumber.
Land shark. Yeah. And, like, I'm amused. I haven't thought about the land sharks in a long time, but, Lorraine, it was probably either Gilda. Was it
It's
Gilda or
Gilda, yeah.
Lorraine? It's Gilda. And it's just alone in her apartment. And then the land shark comes and eats her. End of the sketch. So brilliant. So funny.
So brilliant.
So
Yeah,
absurd.
and she goes, "Plumber? I didn't ask for a plumber."
Yeah.
And then they go, "Telegram." "Oh,
Yeah.
telegram."
And, but, I'm just gonna, I'm not gonna, disparage anyone that may have written that sketch, but you had to be high to write that.
Yeah. Well, and thank goodness to them. Cheers to
Yeah.
them. And hey,
So
we
what
did a pretty good job at live. I think we're pretty good at live. What do you think, Richard?
yeah, I mean, listen, the tightrope that they're walking is like, a tightrope made of razor blades, though. That is something, man, that, and, I will leave on this. One of my favorite sketches of all time isn't really all that funny, but it is funny, but I don't think they do it today. It's called Dancing in the Dark, and they did it, it's like 1978, 79, somewhere in there, and Steve Martin and Gilda Radner are in a little cafe, and they sort of catch one another's eye, and then they do this dance, and they dance through the studio, and then eventually at the end of it, he sort of, with a big flourish, sits her back down at the table, and the dancing is funny. It's Steve Martin and the Wild and Crazy Guy kind of era, but it's so sweet. And Gilda, it was such a genius. And just to see them, she's no longer with us, and to see the two of them interact like that, it's one of my favorite pieces ever on Saturday Night Live.
Oh, that is not coming to mind, so thank you. I'll have
Yep.
to look that up. And that's
Yep.
the thing. This is the gift that keeps on giving. There
Yep.
are about 1,000 clips that we could just sit here and talk about, ones that I'll forget, ones that I'll remember. Like I said, there are whole people like Will Ferrell. You think of Will Ferrell because he's done so much since then. You almost forget he has so many
I
incredible
know.
characters. The
Yep.
cheerleader, the cowbell.
Yeah, the cowbell will be the one, I think, that people will look back and say that might be the perfect Saturday Night Live sketch because it's not about anything. It is about performance, and it's about, a song that a lot of people know, and Will Ferrell's just the way he's just giving it with the cowbell. It's absurd. It shouldn't work, but it absolutely does. Kills.
Speaking of it kills, thank you for another great week on the
You've
podcast.
killed some time.
We have. This was another really, really fun one. We've been chatting about potentially doing a live
Mm,
podcast, speaking of live. So if you guys are interested in that, let us know. Subscribe and follow along anywhere you listen to your podcast, including YouTube. And
mhm.
we'll see you here weekly.
See you later. Thanks for joining us.